Welcome back to the Infinite Jungle. On today's episode, I am joined by two very familiar guests, EthStaker's Nixo Rokish and Galaxy's Yorick Downe. We are going to be talking about the changes in the deposit command line interface in Pectra, and we're also going to be talking about PeerDAS in Pectra, the impacts of PeerDAS on solo stakers. We have two exciting topics, but as always, before we begin, here is a quick show disclaimer. I need to remind you to please refer to the disclaimer linked in the podcast show notes and note that none of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice, an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy Digital or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. Great to have you back on the show, Nixo and Yorick. How are y'all doing?
So good. It's great. Always good to chat.
Thanks for having us.
Happy September, the fall is upon us, and there has been some progress on Pectra. Developers are slowly but surely making their way through implementing all of the 20 EIPs that are in there.
Goodness gracious, yes.
Yeah, I know.
That makes it a small fork, right? A small fork.
You know the meme of like how it started versus how it's going? You know, it's like that innocent small fork, and then now it's this monstrous fork. Nixo, you had mentioned when we were prepping for this show, there are some changes to the deposit command line interface, CLI, that you wanted to talk about in this call, that it's going to be helpful for validators. Give us the rundown of what this is and why it's important.
Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to talk about it for 1 second, and then I'm going to tee up Yorick, who knows a lot more about it. But so basically, solo stakers have had this tool, the deposit CLI, that was put out by the EF early on before the launch of the beacon chain, and it pretty much has not changed since then. It's been maintained minimally, and the values behind that have sort of just been like minimal maintenance to make sure that the tool stays as secure as possible, which means that there are a lot of things that have changed in staking that have not been reflected in the deposit CLI. And so we're really excited because we finally found some people who had the motivation within the EthStaker community to update that CLI, and EthStaker is funding the audit, which is going to give a lot more flexibility to people entering staking. And I'm going to tee it over to Yorick to talk about like what is changing and how the progress on that is going.
Sure. So, for those who don't know, the deposit CLI is a tool that creates validator keys. That was really almost all it did, and then with Denkun, it gained, or a little earlier, not with Denkun, sorry, with the previous ones, it gained the ability to also do a change where you could set your withdrawal address, right? Notably,
Shanghai.
Yeah, Shanghai, that was the right there.
Whatever it's called.
Notably, what it didn't do, although they discussed doing this, it didn't ask people for their withdrawal address when making new keys. So you always had to remember to type that on command line so that, your address would be in there and you didn't have to do the change later and the mnemonic wasn't scary and all those kind of things. So what we've done is really twofold. The first is with just maintenance, homework, right? Bringing the dependencies up to date, making it work on modern systems with newer versions of Python, creating a Docker image. We're going to also release it for additional machines. So we want it on Linux, ARM64, that's like the ROC 5B kind of devices, those little guys, right? And then we want it to work on the new type of Windows machines that Microsoft is bringing out that are also running on ARM64. And there's going to be an updated macOS binary and so on. So that's just basic housekeeping and maintenance. We're also adding a couple commands for kind of user convenience. So we're going to have the ability to sign an exit message, and then people can submit that through Beacon Chain or something, a similar tool, right? So that allows you to say full life cycle of the validator. You create the key with the tool, has the withdrawal address already baked in, you start validating, you sign an exit message, maybe you put that aside for later or even for your heirs. And then, whenever you're ready to receive that money again, or your heirs are ready to receive the money again, they just drag and drop that file right into Beacon Chain and the validator gets exited and the money goes to the withdrawal address. So to have that kind of full life cycle in the tool is the goal. As Nick said, we're going to audit this again. It's going to get re-audited in October. We currently have, I think, 8 blocking changes outstanding, 2 of which will be handled by community members, leaving 6 for Remy, Valifar, and myself to do. I think we're on good track to get this done in time for audit. Then it will go through audit with TrailerBits. We will handle any issues that get flagged during audit. And then we can say, okay, this is now a version 1, or maybe we'll call it version 3. I don't know yet how we're going to version it. And ready for general consumption, right?
Nice. So this is completely independent of the Pectra upgrade. It's like a nice little update to a tool that perhaps new validators or trying to encourage perhaps new at-home stakers. Like, look, we've got a new deposit CLI. It makes the process even nicer if you wanted to, potentially run your own validator.
Right.
Yeah.
It does lay the groundwork for Pectra, because with Pectra, of course, you can now consolidate validators, and you can have validators with up to 2048 ETH. So we also want to then add these features into the tool. But in order to be even able to think about that, we first need it, fully maintained and audited again, and then we can build on that.
Gotcha. And in terms of the funding for this tool, was it initially funded by the Ethereum Foundation? How is EthStaker community funding the efforts for this to keep it maintained and up and running even through, multiple upcoming Ethereum upgrades?
So we're completely grant funded, and so our funds go into a pool that maintain the software and tooling that we have, and it also goes into a pool where we look for projects that are worth funding. And so this audit is one of the things that we're putting that funding towards, because it'll improve the quality of life of solo stakers, of existing and future solo stakers.
Nice. And this is probably a silly question, but I remember during the merge, there was that website with the rhinoceros, and that was where everybody was going to go to to deposit and to spin up validators. Is that the deposit CLI? It's not, right? It's not. That's a completely different tool. That's a Launchpad. Okay, is there something? Oh, okay, that Launchpad was iconic. It was the way, the official way to be a validator and not get your money hacked or anything. Oh, okay. So what about thoughts on that? Are we going to update the Launchpad? Do we have new Launchpads coming up? Who's maintaining the Launchpad?
So all of this needs updating. All of this was tooling that was put out by the EF. So all of this needs maintaining. And EthStaker is very supportive of anybody who wants to come in and propose changes. The thing is, we just have to make sure that these people are very familiar with staking, have used the tooling extensively, understand what they want to maintain, understand what they want to do. And there is funding for it. We want to fund people to update these things. And the Launchpad does need updating, and that is sort of on the docket of things that we would like to encourage people to update, and that has been talked about within EthStaker. But it takes a certain amount of motivation. It takes a passion for solo staking and good developers.
Yeah, and it's also something where we want to be careful, right? We're careful with this. So one of the things we're doing with this tool is we're cryptographically signing the binaries so that people can verify that they were truly created by us. Because there's a lot of money that's at stake here, right? So with the Launchpad, I think once we have the tool ready and audited, we're going to have a discussion with the Launchpad maintainers. There's really just one major thing I'm thinking about pre-Pectra with the Launchpad. It doesn't work too well right now with multiple validators. People have 6 validators say that their transactions start failing after a couple. It's just an interaction with the wallet code, right? So we'll have to see where that goes. I don't want to just go out there and say, yeah, we'll fork the world and create new things for everything. That's not always the right answer. But we do want these tools updated, and they work in tandem. Wagyu Keygen is a UI that sits on top of staking deposit CLI. So a lot of people who like graphical interfaces may have used Wagyu Keygen, but Wagyu Keygen bundles staking deposit CLI. It will, once we are done here and it's audited, then instead bundle EthStaker deposit CLI.
I'd like to see some work on the Launchpad. That seems like one of the core gateways for solo stakers, especially ones that have low technical background. Instead of using a command line interface, going through the nice
For sure.
graphics of the rhinoceros and moving along with your stake. I remember when the merge was happening, that was such a big deal. I completely forgot about it, but shout out to people who are listening. If you have the technical know-how, you've used it before, and you're willing to take on a new passion project, take a look. I'll also link the Launchpad to our show notes in case people want to see, what we're talking about.
And like a good first step might just be opening issues and discussing it with people, and like just seeing if there's existing discussion and what can be done from those issues.
Yeah, when she says issues, she means GitHub issues, right?
Yeah.
So
there's a GitHub for the Launchpad.
There is, of course, a GitHub for the Launchpad. Everything, as far as I know, I think the Ethereum Foundation is and always has been free and open source. So there is a GitHub for the Launchpad.
Let's start talking about PeerDAS. I talked about it quite a bit on yesterday's Infinite Jungle episode, and I am concerned. I am concerned about the impact of PeerDAS on solo stakers, because as much as we have all these nice tools that we may be trying to update, it does not seem as though the additional networking bandwidth requirements, computational requirements that are going to be needed with a massive amount of new blob transactions is really going to be something that at-home stakers can handle. Of course, developers are looking at options and avenues to ensure that PeerDAS does not, completely decimate and demolish the ability of people to run validators on low-grade machines. But it also kind of seems like the benchmark is moving, and the sentiment around developers about what really is an at-home staker, and do they have actually the finances to maybe get a machine that's better than a Raspberry Pi? It seems as though, hardware costs are changing and the target keeps moving. But are you guys concerned about that too? I mean, Yorick, we talked about this a little bit before the show started too, but I'm quite concerned about the viability of home staking in the future of Ethereum.
So I would kick the question back maybe. When you say you're concerned about the viability, do you have like a number, something where you say, PeerDAS requires you to do X, and I don't know how we're going to do that?
Well, if PeerDAS increases the blob count from currently it's 3 to 6, 3 target 6 max, I believe with PeerDAS, the target now is going to be 16 blobs and a maximum of 32. Right now, the way PeerDAS is designed, that's going to increase block production times by 1 second, up to 1 second on low-grade machines, as is what developers were talking about on the latest dev call, and that's not okay. 1 second is a long time.
We have 4 seconds total, right?
So block times are 12 seconds, but I guess the block creation process is 4 seconds.
It's 4 seconds, correct. Yeah.
I see. And so developers are talking about ways in which to change this so that it doesn't take 1 second. But that's what concerns me. The current design of PeerDAS is not home staker friendly. And to what extent, when we see a future of maybe 100 blobs or 1,000 blobs, to what extent are home stakers going to be able to stick around? It's so unviable to be a home staker today. Wow, the lights went off in my studio. But anyways, right as I'm talking about home staking, the lights are going out for home stakers, guys. Even the studio is listening to us. It's already pretty hard to be a home staker. And so, yes, this is concerning to me.
You look like you had thoughts on that, Nix.
So there are two different sides to this. One is hardware, one is internet. And hardware, I'm not super concerned about. People have this People have this meme of Raspberry Pis that I am actually kind of annoyed that this keeps coming up, because there are specific hobbyists who try to get things running on Raspberry Pis, but I think the majority of stakers and the majority of developers aren't building to optimize for Raspberry Pis. Like, we know that Raspberry Pis are like a hobbyist piece of hardware that people try to run like home systems with. It's not to secure $100,000. And so I think that we could reasonably increase hardware requirements, because I don't think anybody's hurting right now. Like, we have a lot of people running on 16 gigabyte RAM. We have a lot of people running on 2 terabyte hard drives and SSDs, and that's going to increase. That's not super painful for people to increase to 32 gigabyte RAMs and to 4 terabyte hard drives. But in terms of internet bandwidth, it's difficult to know, because most people don't track their internet bandwidth. And when we put out the solo staker survey, we did see that the majority of solo stakers don't even pay attention to their bandwidth and don't know how much bandwidth their node is taking up. But also, some of those people ran in the cloud. Some of those people live in urban environments. They live all over the world. Most of those people were in Europe or North America who answered that survey. Anecdotally, I am a very small subset of the stakers, but I run 2 nodes. I'm nomadic, and I run these 2 nodes at other people's houses who have generously allowed me to use their internet, and I have upgraded both of their internet packages to whatever the max is that they're allowed. And for one of that's 500 megabits, and for the other person, that's gigabit. And I have issues with both, because one of those people, the 500 megabits, turns off my internet for 1 hour a day on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because they have an important Google Meet meeting that it apparently interferes with. And so 1 hour a day, I just hope that I don't get a proposal. And the other one, I just found out recently that he turned off ports, or closed ports that I needed open, and was like, "Oh, did you notice that?" And I was like, "Yes, yes." And neither of these people have like a good understanding of staking, and they're generous. I mean, it's very generous of them to let a nomad use their internet, and so I'm not like pushing on it, but I do notice that like it is messing with their streaming, it's messing with their video conferencing. And if it were my internet, I would put up with that, and I would probably optimize it and have time to troubleshoot it. And that's like a technically savvy person. And we don't want everybody who's a solo staker to have to like extensively troubleshoot and figure out how to optimize their internet. And because networking is hard, very few people are good at networking. I think that's the majority of the, I actually, Yorick, tell me, is it the majority of the, or at least some majority of the problems that we see taken to EthStaker is like this networking problem that I don't
I
know
would
how
say,
somebody.
yeah, it's way up there. So the 2 things that typically throw people for a loop is just having a command line, right, and not being used to it. And the other one is, okay, what on earth is a port? What is a port forwarding? What's a CGNAT? What's an IPv6? What the hell am I doing over here? Right? Networking is not something people typically have to think about.
One piece of advice that I was given was like segment the people's internet so that like my node lives on some portion of the internet that like it has a max, and I'm like,
Yep,
okay, I'm gonna have to go to their
correct.
house, and I'm gonna have to do this
Configure that
myself.
in their router.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm not gonna ask them to figure this out, and like I just that's already like an
Quality of
expert level
service is
thing.
definitely a little advanced. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
If
It is
that's
doable. It's a little
if that's the
advanced.
current state of affairs for solo stakers, I gotta say, it's not looking good. Even a minor increase in networking requirements, in coffee, whatever, it's already sounds like solo staking is very, very difficult for someone who's doing it out of the
For
goodness
some
of their own
people, yeah.
heart. I wonder if I truly wonder if solo stakers and home stakers are a dying percentage of the types of validators we have on
I
Ethereum.
don't think home stakers are dying. Solo stakers certainly don't have to die. I don't even think home stakers are dying. But maybe it's useful to just step back a second and say, what are we even trying to achieve here? What is PeerDAS? Why are we doing this? What are we trying to do? Right? So as you say, we have 3 to 6 blobs right now. And of those 3 blobs, somewhere between 60 and 80% get used on average, right? And then after that, of course, we go into price discovery and scarcity, and then we can go up to 6, the same way that gas works with 15 to 30 million. So we were successful, hugely successful. Layer 2 is using the blobs. Activity there is up. Prices have come way down to under a cent per transaction. It's amazing. So now we want to scale that further. In order to do that, we need more blobs. And so right now, with 4844, I actually have to get all of the blobs. This might be part of what's hammering Unix, so I'm not entirely sure, right? So I have to get 100% of the blobs. This is the data availability here for the rollups. PeerDAS aims to do this differently, that I need between 12 and 18% of the blobs in order to show that the data is available and the data can be reconstructed through a peer-to-peer network. So the intent here is to look at, okay, how can we scale Ethereum further? And by Ethereum, we mean really the entire Ethereum ecosystem, not just the Ethereum main chain layer 1, but all of the layer 2s as well. How can we scale that while at the same time not linearly completely, blowing the bandwidth requirements out as we go to more blobs? That was the intent and still is the intent of PeerDAS as I understand it. So now, what are developers thinking about short and longer term to save local block production? Specifically, that's what we're talking about. So if I'm a home staker and I'm using MEV Boost or maybe soon Commit Boost, and somebody else is building the block for me, I really don't have all that much to do. I might still need some of these blobs, but in block production, I'm not hurting for block production time. Somebody else is doing that. But let's say we want to keep local block production active, and we do. So then the short-term idea out there right now is to increase the communication abilities between the consensus layer agent and the execution layer agent. So consensus layer might be something like a Nimbus, a Lodestar, a Lighthouse. Execution layer is your Reth, your Geth, your Nethermind, your Besu, right? On the consensus layer, I don't want to leave Teku out. I'm not leaving anybody out, right? So whatever we have, I'm not going to be exhaustive. Anyway, going on. To increase the ability for these to communicate so that a solo staker can say, if I'm building locally, I can really only handle this many blobs. That's how much I want from my internet connection. There will be room there for organizations like EthStaker to test that and see what's the impact on the bandwidth and then give recommendations to say, if this is your up and down that you can spare, then we recommend you set it to this value. That's the short-term fix that I think they're looking to ship with Pectra so that, home staking and local block building doesn't die. And then if
Wait, one question about this. Well, to clarify the difference between home stakers and solo stakers, because we're using both terms and it doesn't sound as though they're both interchangeable. My understanding is that a home staker / solo staker is somebody who stakes their own 32 ETH. But let me know. Maybe please clarify.
I would say a home staker is someone who's running it on their home internet, and a solo staker is somebody who's running 32 ETH. And so that could be on their home internet or in a data center.
Right.
I see.
So Remy, for example, wrote an article about how to do this with OVH for like anywhere between $60 and $80 a month, right? Of course, home staking costs less and is still the gold standard. If the internet is good enough for it, is really the limiter here, right? So short term, have a parameter that can be tweaked to not completely blow the bandwidth requirements out. Medium to long term, the whole thing may change, and so there. This is kind of something where we're saying, okay, we're in a trade-off space. We want to scale Ethereum. How do we do that while still keeping decentralization and home staking alive? And one of the ideas being kicked around right now is, okay, so why are we building blocks locally? One of the reasons to do so is to have censorship resistance. So in a potential future, with enshrined proposer-builder separation, with enshrined inclusion lists, we could see a situation where we don't need locally built blocks anymore for censorship resistance. We may still want to build blocks locally, but one of the ideas that's being kicked around is, well, what if the blob processing itself happens somewhere else, and you just get a proof for that and verify the proof and then sign your locally built block and off you go, right? Another thing that also speaks a little bit against local block building as we scale. So one of the ideas is to not just scale layer 2, so also scale the gas on Ethereum. Let's say gas goes to, instead of 30 million max, 45 million max, right? Now, local building already becomes even less competitive than it already is. When you think about how much you can make with an external builder who can extract maximal extractable value, MEV, right? So that's arbitrage opportunities and things of that nature, versus what you can do at home with just your fees, then that's going to get, that difference will open up wider if there's more room in the block for more transactions because our gas limit is up. So naturally, yes, we do want to scale the chain, of course. Yeah, more use cases means eventually more value accrual. It's good for everyone. We're trying to build the chain and build use cases, and validators just help secure the chain. That's not the reason for the chain to exist. That's also important to understand. The users are the reason for it to exist. But then at the same time, now local building becomes even less competitive. So that's where this enshrined proposer-builder separation comes in. That is all really closely intertwined with all these other scaling ideas to say, I'm leaving maybe the blob production, maybe even the block production to somebody specialized, but then I'm still proposing and attesting to it locally so that we have that decentralization there.
Nixo, any thoughts to add there?
Just to be clear for listeners, the gas limit increase can happen at any time. That doesn't have to happen during
Correct.
a fork. That's not even a decision made by core devs. That is a decision made by validators. And there was a movement earlier this year or last year for validators to up their gas limit, but I think the only reason why it didn't go ahead is because there wasn't really a technical reason for increasing that. It was just crypto Twitter wanting a narrative win against other blockchains. But it could happen at any point. And like if the numbers support like that we're way too low on gas limit, just and that the network we have increased, we have progressed far enough to where we should increase it, and it would not negatively affect validators. We should do it.
I guess one pushback that I'd have to this conversation is over time, the networking requirements for Ethereum as the number of validators have gone up dramatically. And as conversations around potentially increasing the gas and having people upgrade their machines, I think the priority to have a decentralized block builder, to not allow validators, to have some validators just accept proofs from more super nodes and have the validators be a little bit more lightweight. It seems as though the timing for all of that will happen in such a way where solo stakers, I hope I'm using that term right, or maybe it's home stakers. But basically, the individuals that are staking and proposing blocks on their own and participating in the network as an independent, or not as a business, those people are already being pushed out. And the prioritization and the timing of all this will, even if there is such a solution where people from home or people that are independent don't have to propose the block or build the block, they'll already at that point just be out of the network. Like, it's much harder to decentralize a network that has become centralized than to maintain the decentralization of a protocol and continue to progress it. So all of these changes for scalability, it seems to all be happening at the expense of solar stakers, and I totally understand there's paths forward to improve their situation, but the situation is bad now, and it's only going to get worse. I believe sampling is even going to not be in PeerDAS in the beginning, and so I think it's good that it's a priority, but I just wonder if the community of people that are here for verifying the chain as an independent actor, those types of people were already, it's already too low, and it's not likely that they're going to be coming back. And there goes my lights again.
Well, we're talking trade-off space again. And so in Ethereum, at least, I feel good that the trade-offs are being taken seriously and that effort is being made to truly keep home stakers and solo stakers alive. There are those forces within ACD, and they're loud, so all core devs, to still make that viable while also looking at, okay, how do we continue delivering on the Ethereum roadmap? I think the alternative of not delivering on the Ethereum roadmap is not an alternative at all. Right? We need to continue building Ethereum to what it could be, and that's programmable money. And we're not there.
And to be clear, as a validator, as a solo staker, as an independent operator, I don't do this out of the goodness of my heart. I do it because I get paid. And as long as solo stakers are getting paid in a way that incentivizes them to do this, that makes up the cost of their hardware, I think that we can still convince people to do this. It gets harder when hardware no longer outweighs the validator rewards that you get. So if it takes 2 years to make up your validator rewards, and by that time you have to buy new hardware, then it doesn't make any sense unless you're operating
Correct.
with the economies of scale. So I think as long as, we're truly not irrational actors. We do this to get paid. And so as long as independent operators are able to make up their hardware costs and are making money doing this, I think that they can stay on the network, especially because it's not just core devs that have an inclination to advocate for solo stakers. It's researchers too. Researchers coming up with all these block construction changes. I would say the majority of them make pretty good effort to say this is going to affect solo stakers, and especially the ones with the louder voices, the more robust research proposals like rainbow staking from Barnabé Mono, very heavily take into account solo stakers.
We must remain vigilant, you guys. And
Yes.
to the extent that we can make the profitability of solo stakers a bit better, a bit more competitive, I think we should. But this has been a lovely conversation. And I appreciate your guys' thoughts of reminding people of the intent and the continued concern that this is on Ethereum developers and researchers' minds. I guess, yeah, we'll have to see as PeerDAS gets fleshed out even more, and as Pectra comes together, the real impact it's going to have on stakers.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone, to folks who were listening to this conversation. This was your monthly update on the staking ecosystem with Yorick, Nixo, and Christine. As always, thank you for coming on the show, Yorick and Nixo, and thank you for people always tuning into the Infinite Jungle. We hope that you learned something new about Ethereum. We hope that you learned something new about the Ethereum staking ecosystem. And if you enjoyed the show, and if you learned something and you think that your friend would also benefit from learning it too, please share the episode. Until next time, in your explorations of the infinite jungle that is Ethereum, stay safe out there.